Harrington here, folks, bringing you the good stuff. All right, so as you know, I try to keep these episodes as relevant as possible to you guys. And one of the ways that I do that is I bring you, actual cases with actual clients, things that have come up in the wild as part of my practice, so that, that seems to me like the best way to make sure that I'm talking about stuff that's actually relevant to you. Well, I'm going to do that today, and I'll be honest with you, this case is a bit of a downer. It's pretty upsetting, to be perfectly honest with you, the whole situation, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it to your attention, so let's do that. Our Practice Makes Perfect is the podcast for business owners and real estate investors, siempre con un cariño especial para los clientes extranjeros. Okay, part one, let me just lay down the fact pattern here. What happened? Okay, my clients are a mother and a daughter. And years ago, they went to go see an attorney about a property that the mother owned, and she wanted it to pass to her daughter. I mean, the notion was that, mom would pass away before the daughter. And they wanted that transition, the transfer of the property to happen as seamlessly as possible, as efficiently as possible. Okay, well, the attorney, and I don't blame this person, by the way, it wasn't me, but I'm not going where you might think I'm going with that. They gave common advice, good advice. In fact, we talked about this in episode 36. The attorney said, well, look, probably the cheapest thing you can do and the most efficient thing you can do is what's called a deed with a right of survivorship. So how's that work? Well, so you prepare a deed. Mom's name's going to be on it. Actually, both names are going to be on it, mom and the daughter. And then it's just going to have that little phrase at the end with right of survivorship. So that means when one of them dies, then the other one will just remain on title by herself in this case. So presumably mother will die first, and then that leaves the daughter on title by herself. No need to go through a probate. No need to do anything. It just happens automatically. So it is very cost effective. It did not turn out to be a good idea in this case. Nobody's fault really, but there was a series of mishaps, and I want to talk about that because that's how these poor people end up in the situation that they're in. All right. Mom decides to sell the property. By the way, the daughter is on title, but she doesn't really have anything to do with this property. She's on title as a matter of convenience, so they say. So the expression goes, meaning that, just so that the title would transfer to her in a very convenient fashion, when mom passes away. But she doesn't really have anything to do with this property. It's mom's property, right? That becomes relevant later on. So mom decides to sell the property. She goes to a title company, right? That's what we do here in Florida, the professional title company. There's a title agent that's trained and represents the title insurer. There's probably a closer who's going to be a very experienced paralegal who knows how to do closings. And then for good measure, mom does one other thing that some parties do. She hired an attorney to represent her as the seller in the transaction. Well, one of the things you do as a title company is you order a title search. And it comes back, you get something called a commitment, and on the commitment you're going to see all the liens that are affecting the property that have to be paid off at closing in order for the buyer to get clean title. Maybe you can see where this is going. So, amazingly, everybody missed it. And there was one lien, let's call it a second mortgage, because basically that's what it was. Everyone missed it. The mom, who's the seller, her attorney missed it. The closer missed it, and the title agent missed it. All three of these professionals missed that lien. It does happen, I'm not as crazy, but it does happen. And for just this situation, we have title insurance. So there are these huge insurance companies out there that they insure title, and it's precisely for this situation. Many of you know what I'm talking about. You've probably seen those charges on your HUD, or your closing statement, showing the premiums that are going to this title insurer. Well, that's what it's for. So some time goes by, the client, she has her sale proceeds, and it turns out that she had some circumstances. Her partner was dealing with some crazy medical bills. She ended up spending all that money from the sale to cover medical bills. Just to make things exceptionally horrible, she spent the money for that rather noble cause. Well, the buyer eventually figures out that she didn't get clean title, that, there's this second mortgage. It's not her mortgage. That's not her name on the loan. And she's like, hey, somebody's got to deal with this. Well, the title company stepped up, which is what they're supposed to do, paid off that second mortgage, and now the buyer has clean title. For those of you who aren't in the real estate world on a daily basis, let me just give you an analogy. So you know how if you're in an accident, a car accident, for example, it's not your fault. Your insurance company will pay for your damages, But then what they will do is they'll turn around and go after the at-fault party and try to get reimbursement. Okay, so the same thing here. The title company turned around and came after my clients because they had to cover that second mortgage for them. In both car accidents and title work, it's called a subrogation action when the insurance company does that. So my client, the mom, was like, uh-oh, I spent all the money. But that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is that the daughter now is caught up in all this. She has nothing to do with this property. She was just there as a matter of convenience. Nonetheless, her name was on the title, and now she finds herself being sued by the title insurance company to reimburse them for a loan that also doesn't belong to the daughter. And just to make things even worse, the insurance company and their attorneys are very aggressive, so they garnished everything, and they're just making these poor ladies' lives miserable. So that's the fact pattern. Part 2, what could have been done differently to avoid this situation, yet accomplish the same goal? All right, it's perfectly understandable. As I said, I don't have anything bad to say about the attorney who set them up with that right of survivorship deed. That's a very common thing to do. It is a very cost-effective thing to do. So no blame there. But how could this have been avoided? Well, it could have been avoided by doing a trust. As you guys know, I love me some trusts. And I feel remiss for not having mentioned this in episode 36, that while this right of survivorship solution is super efficient, there can be some drawbacks. Now, I don't want to pontificate here and overly simplify this, because when there's a mortgage against a property, that might limit your ability to put the property in a trust. So I don't know if that would have worked or not. And, then we get into things like, property mortgage insurance and as maybe being a solution. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole here. But I just want to say that when possible, if you can use a land trust, that's a much better, much safer way of succession planning. In fact, it would be a much better way for all around, because in that case, the seller would be the trust, not mom individually. The daughter would not even be on title at all, right? So she wouldn't have any liability in the situation. Yet, the daughter would be named as the beneficiary. So you still get that succession planning mechanism where, if mom passes away, then the property, well, actually, she would remain in place as the beneficiary. Maybe she would step up as the trustee. So you accomplish the same thing. There's no need for a probate, but without exposing the daughter to potential liability. So let me just say it this way. Rather than, and this after everything went wrong and the insurance company had to kick in and then they bring their subrogation action, the named defendant in that lawsuit would be the land trust. It would not be mom personally. So that's much safer. Part 3, what are our takeaways here? Well, as you can see, it's a complicated situation. Maybe mom couldn't put this in a land trust because she was financing it. So that does give you less flexibility very often. The attorney who advised them to use the right of survivorship deed did nothing wrong. I have nothing bad to say about that person. I do, on the other hand, have something bad to say about the attorney that represented mom in the closing. That attorney's a jerk. That person will get sued, although it's not part of my practice to sue colleagues, and I don't like doing it, but that's ridiculous. Title company, this is what they do. They're the ones that are really the most to blame for this. They have, not very many jobs. I do title work. We're a title company. I mean, it's tedious work, but probably the main thing you have to do is make sure that all the liens get paid, right? That anything affecting the title gets resolved prior to the closing so that the buyer gets clean title. I mean, that's your fundamental function. So both of those jerks are getting sued. I guess the other takeaway would be, whenever possible, you use a land trust. Like if we're talking about investment property here, use a land trust. If you're talking about even if you're talking about a homestead, maybe not even an investment property, but a homestead, you may have the same concern of wanting to, do some efficient sort of succession planning. Well, in that case, you're still better off with a trust whenever you can, than just putting this other person on title, thereby exposing them to anything that might go wrong in the future. Although 99% of the time that's not going to happen, but still, it happened this time, and it's created a really sad situation. One final thought, and we'll get out of here. And I probably shouldn't even touch this, but I can't help it. I mean, I feel badly for my clients, and so I can't help but reflect on this. We have a title insurance company that is suing our clients, right? Now, title insurance company exists for this precise situation, and they get paid premiums. And those of you who are in the real estate game, you know they get paid decent money to insure these titles. And, you know, what percentage of the time are we talking that they actually have to kick in and cover a bad debt? Pretty small percentage of the time, right? So they've done their job for which they've been paid, covering this second mortgage that got missed through no fault of my clients. I mean, she not only did the normal stuff, relying upon a title company, but she did an extra step and hired an attorney to cover her because she's not in the real estate game. She's retired from the school system. Like, you know, she's just a regular person. So that's my final thought here. I mean, is there some kind of a double compensation when you got the insurance company receiving their premiums, and then after they have to pay out a relatively small amount in this case, and then go after the party to whom the debt actually belonged and recover from that party? Is that not somehow kind of a double compensation? I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe you guys can tell me how you feel about it. I'm sure there are other perspectives here. I'm too close to it because I deal with these ladies and, you know, I feel badly for them. You know, maybe that keeps the insurance prices down. I don't know. Maybe you guys can bring me around. Try and help me out. Maybe there's something I'm not thinking about here. But I don't like it. Doesn't feel good in this situation. That's what I got for you guys today. Sorry if this episode was a bit of a downer, but as you can see, I wanted you to know about this so you don't find yourselves dealing with this nightmare. And recuerda que hablamos español. You know what to do down below, and I will see you guys very soon.